good morning, good evening, everyone. Today I'm gonna continue, with number 5 of reflecting on reframing perception. And last time I spoke about that there are two concepts of time, linear and cyclical, and they create different perceptions. While cyclical time, of day and night and the seasons helps us understand how natural systems work, how the biosphere works, there's of course also a place for linear time concepts. In particular, when it comes to management, project management or deadlines and so on, we need linear time. But linear time is really a human invention. And has become a foundational concept for Western thought, emphasizing progress, growth, and an orientation towards a perfection or a certain final state we could arrive at. And I'm quite sure, we can all observe this in our own minds, worrying and wanting and not wanting and so on, very often in relationship to such a final state, we are basically hallucinating because there is no final state other than, full awakening, That is the end of all of this. So this is like, similar to an acquired taste, a conditioned way of perceiving and under the influence of our upbringing and education and so on. And we have gone pretty far down the road in consumer capitalist societies, and at the moment we are witnessing breaking apart of all of it because the biosphere simply cannot sustain it. Because we have become so many people doing this, operating in this way. And it's scary. And it's really like a very much a simple truth, that perceptual worlds are different. And we know that, from organisms which are further away from us on the evolutionary tree, their perceptions are vastly different from our own. For example, a very simple example is we humans, we can see colors that dogs can't see, and dogs can hear sounds which we can't hear. Or insects, have a different eye. They have what's called a compound eye, and they can see motion much more refined than we can, but they are much less able to see shapes. So it's just very different perceptual processes, which have been conditioned, and each species, makes sense of their world through different ways of perceiving, and none of them are intrinsically real, but they are simply reasonably real, allowing each species to function and survive. So reasonably real, and in our case, our perception is no longer reasonably real because we are basically pushing ourselves towards extinction and taking along many other species. So it's no longer reasonably real even. And, there's a lot of propaganda which is trying to distort that perception that it is no longer reasonably real for someone's end, and I think we know what those persons are. They are the top 1% or something of this society, very rich and in control of a lot of businesses. And we can witness that, currently to a very scary degree, shocking degree. So even it's not real, you know, but if a lot of people believe into some kind of perception, this is what we need to live inside of. So what is real? The Buddha has always avoided, you know, to discuss if ultimate reality exists or not. He was only interested in, you know, he said, I teach about how suffering comes about and how the end of suffering comes about. That's the essence of what he is teaching about. And that was then, you know, laid out as the Four Noble Truths, including the Noble Eightfold Path, which he called, you know, the handful of leaves. He said, you need to know only this handful of leaves in order to escape, you know, these continuous rounds of rebirth based on ignorance, not understanding what is the origin of suffering and what leads to the end of it. And that was the only thing he was interested in teaching about. Particularly, you know, in the early Buddhist dispensation. And basically, you know, we never can experience ultimate reality, even if there would be one. We can only experience what our mind can experience, and that's what we have to live and deal with, you know. And we know that different people have different experience in the same circumstances. And one person, because of early trauma, might be very fearful about a certain constellation of circumstances, and another one not. And between species, there's even also a great difference. So perception is really empty. So we can only know our own mind's experience of so-called ultimate reality. And that's what we have to live and deal with. And I think, therefore, it's really appropriate to adjust perception as much as possible to what we can know to be true. And leave behind all of that which stands in the way, which has been proven wrong by simply what we see unfolding all around us on the planet. And one of those facts is, you know, that the planet cannot sustain these ways of living. And even, you know, if we try to kind of push everybody out and, you know, take control and so on, that won't change, you know. The planet cannot support this. It has already, you know, breached some of the planetary limits. And, you know, there is still a lot to be done to bring that push, you know, to bring that push to slow it down, slow it down, slow it down. Because it's, you know, I mean, I don't need to say it here, you know, we are not in control of planet Earth. And as much as, you know, certain groups of people try to pretend we are, that there are just a few people which need to be getting rid of, and then it's all gonna be okay. We all know here on this call that this is not true. So therefore, you know, we really, one thing we can do, you know, on a practice level in order to balance out all of the, you know, input which comes through the news, which comes through just, you know, going out into the world, taking advantage of the fact that perception is empty and therefore shapeable. So we can intentionally build heartful perception in order to restore a sense of sacredness, a sense of devotion, a sense of reverence, a sense of awe, and, you know, and bring back a stronger connection to a sense of meaning of our lives. Even, you know, there is a lot of chaos going on. destabilizing us. So, being in the chaos, which is also happening, and it's part of change. Change is not possible without a certain amount of chaos. But we need also something big enough which can hold all of it, which can hold us, and which can fuel, our hearts in the middle of all of this shake-up which is happening. So, let's now change posture. We can maybe, sustain for a good 45 minutes we've got for the meditation. And just, sensing into the body, the weight of the body, where you're sitting. And just checking in with yourself. Another week has gone by, and since we met last, and some other crazy things have happened we would not expect. We wouldn't have expected, rather. And here we are, in the middle of all of it, and we are together in all of this. So how are you right now? What are you bringing? Some, stress, anxiety, tiredness, discouragement, or maybe ease. It's very beautiful outside. If I look, see the sun, inside of this beautiful tree outside my window, and it looks also splendid, really. So just landing in the body and connecting with this aliveness. And sensing the gravitational embrace of the earth. It keeps us in place. Feeling the blood pulsing in the fingertips and maybe in our necks. Enjoying, this automatic cycling of the liquids through the body. And knowing, that those liquids in our body are actually part of the larger water and mineral cycles of the watershed region where we are. We let go of them when we go to the bathroom, and then we drink and we let go, and this body doesn't have any boundaries in reality. And allowing your mind to kind of be boggled for a moment in a good way. Just as the blood nourishes us, water is the blood of the body of the earth. This vast being we are part of. we operate inside of, never separate. And this is the perceptual shift we need to train ourselves in, because it's only this perceptual shift which can support us to give birth to new ways of doing and being on this or in this planet. Perceiving ourselves as part of a living, intelligent earth and participating in this vast being through this aliveness, which takes form in so many ways, and our species being just one among so many, countless. And we are not special. We are unique, but we are not special. And that's the perceptual shift which can open up new responses. And it's a training. And it's kind of the main thrust of these Wednesday meetings, to befriend ourselves with this different way of looking, so we be more in touch with the way things really are. We still see it, of course, from our own perspective, from the perspective of a Homo sapiens, but it's definitely more in sync with the way things are than pretending, that we are in control of all of this. This is the old paradigm which needs to be released. And these Wednesday gatherings are, there to help us to approach that new paradigm by training ourselves in a different way of looking. And it's not a quick fix. It's a multi-generational response to what is asked from us. And basically making ourselves available through listening what is being said on this wordless level of the energetic experience of aliveness. On a somatic, visceral, embodied level, this communication takes place, not intellectually. The intellect can come in and then help us to enact it. It's more like a vibration, a pulsation that moves through us from the ground up, from the body of the earth. And we might experience it as a aliveness, a vitality, which once we have gotten the hang of it, it's really not difficult to notice. It's an energetic presence. It's like a lifeline. A lifeline between, us, quote unquote, individually, and this vast being we are part of. And never, never separate. A mystery, really. And if we give it conscious, if we consciously give it space by turning towards it and stepping out of the thinking mind and coming into sensing and feeling it, we can connect with it. And start to experience how this power actually expresses. Before it moves into form and diversification. To just honor that power itself by simply, deeply sensing into it and giving it our attention, giving it our awareness. Cutting, through the clutter of the strategizing mind and remembering that which is at the root of our being. It's like a diving deeper into the mystery, the not knowing. It's kind of remembering what we do not know. Well, sometimes it's also called the unknowing, that which cannot be known by the mind, but we can know it by being it. By tuning and listening to it. That's as good as it gets with language, The body as an organ of listening, attuning. And listening. And being that mystery as a resource, so that we can then gain the replenishment so we can go on and do our work from a sense of connection and meaning. Becoming an expression of that which we cannot know with the head. But we can be fueled by it in a mysterious way. It's like, we can call it an emergent update, if that works for you. But whatever works for people, it doesn't really matter. But what is clear is, healing the planet needs to go hand in hand with healing human consciousness, perception, because we cannot come to any healing from the old perception, from the old consciousness of that this is all about us for the taking and so on and so forth. Which some of us or all of us, yes, we don't want to operate like that, but it is work, to really replace that old conditioning and make space. It's like a deep house cleaning, It's not going to be a quick fix. But we can take courage, by seeing we are not alone in this. There is 26 people here on this call. It's not like vast amount of the global population, but it's some. It needs to start somewhere. It's, in this space which we do not control, which we don't even know what it is, this space of vast cycles is where we can gain the replenishment to do the work in the world in our different ways, according to our callings, according to our talents, to our gifts, to our location. That comes from that deeper space of not knowing before this energy, goes into diversification and form through all of us in different ways and all around us in countless species. We are just one, like a flower, each of us, we can say, like a human flower. Some older flowers, some fresher flowers. And sharing with you again this very helpful quote by James Hillman: to sense deeply, we must imagine. And to imagine accurately, we must sense. And sensing that vibratory pulsation, the vitality, the aliveness in the body. And if it's helpful, dropping in a question like, for example, what does the earth need from me? That's an expression of, of the urge to evolve, to participate in the expression of the update, which is coming through. As the planet, has this self-regenerative intelligence to adjust. And if we make space for that information to be received, that's one way, how we can respond. Rather than trying to kind of turn away from it and lash out against other people or make up crazy stories, so we can continue to have a measure of stability. But this opening and listening is another way of creating balance. And it's a growthful way. It expands perception. It allows space for this information to land in us, to have more life landing in us. And doing that, in our own pace. Whatever we can do, we do, and we can't do more, that's fine. And then, trusting in that. I mean, that's the most difficult one for me too. And I need to talk with people about it to keep my trust going, We need each other to keep open. The trust in the mystery is not an easy road. And this mystery can be terrifying in one way, but also is our deepest resource in another way. And what I notice is, opening to that mystery as a group, as we do on those Wednesdays, is so much easier than doing it on my own. And you might be also able to sense it. There's more capacity to open in community. Because that's what the psyche expects, The psyche expects companionship for this kind of heavy-duty work. This is, where rituals and ceremonies and so on were created, to create that holding, to have this renewal together. And then, in that way, it's like, going to the gas pump and getting some fuel again, and then feeling more congruent with our life again. And then again and again and again that is needed. It's like a dynamic dialogue with the mystery, which is at the source of all of this. And as we are, adjusting our perception to more growthful ways of relating, we are living, the Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path, which leads eventually to a complete letting go. But while we are still here, we need to take in the feedback of what's happening around us. Individually and on a systems level. We are not just individuals, we are also parts of a community, locally, globally, and so on. And it's complicated. yeah, all of our machines and AI and all of that cannot free us from the complexity of embodied life. It's only, full awakening which can. We have tried so many ways, and it just leads to more complexity. So, keeping the humor going also about all of it. It's hard learning, and in a sense of loving kindness and compassion, which can come from being willing to open to this. And, remembering that the Buddha was touching the earth in the night of his awakening, and he was calling her to be his witness, that he has finished his work. Because he knew he had finished it. And the earth was responding. And so can we touch the earth and ask her, ask her to inform us about how we can finish the work. At this time, which is different time. So let's just sit a bit quietly now and, connecting with that vibrancy, that vitality, the aliveness. Of the mystery before it takes form. As a nourishment, a replenishment, an energetic information. And if you notice, that your mind wanders off into thinking about something, which is fine, just gently, bringing back your awareness to the body, the energy body, as an organ of listening. Bring us back to life. Supporting us to be able to engage from what's happening with a bigger view. So, the way to participate in that cycle with less and less harm is one element of the Noble Eightfold Path. When it comes to Sila, right speech, right action, right livelihood, and also, right intention. Yeah, it's impossible to be alive without doing any harm, but there's a vast difference between an ethical life, based on right view and right intention, or like a complete self-centered life of great ignorance. As we can see it in the news. To a really alarming level. And I want to share with you another poem by Rosemerry Wahtola Trommer, who also wrote the earthworm poem, the Lumbricus terrestris. And this poem, which I share with you today, is called Please. And it was sent to me by a friend yesterday. If you are one who has practiced meeting the pain of the world, we need you. Right now, we need you to teach us it is possible to swallow what is weighty and still be able to rise. We need you to remind us we can be furious and scared and near Pharaoh over injustice and still thrill at the taste of a strawberry ripe and sweet. Can still meet a stranger and shake their hand, believing in their humanness. We need you to show us how we too can fall into the darkest unplumbed pit and learn there a courage and beauty we could never learn from the light. If you have drowned in sorrow and still have somehow found a way to breathe, please lead us. You are the one with the crumbs we need, the ones we will use to find our way back to the home of our hearts. You are the one with the crumbs we need, the ones we will use to find our way back to the home of our hearts. And the home of our hearts is that knowing of that which can't be known with the intellect, the mystery, the aliveness, the vitality, the source of all of this